Like all humans, men need human contact, human connection. But unlike other humans, men are taught that it makes us less our gender, less manly, to acknowledge that or to openly seek it. But denying and ignoring our need for human contact and connection doesn't make it go away. We still have this deep need for human connection. Pause a second. Guys, I have a question for you. When I say human contact or human connection, what do you hear? Is one of the first things that comes to mind romantic or even sexual? It's okay if it is. Most of us are taught to think that way. I just want to point it out because while that's real, it's also just one tiny element, one tiny expression of human connection, human contact. We need community. We need connection with ourselves. We need family and friends and people who we're close with. If our entire need for healthy community is focused on one romantic partner, that's putting a lot of weight onto that one person. It's this overloading of our partners that breaks many men's relationships. So as I talk about human connection and contact moving forward, I invite you to remember that it's much bigger than your partner. So our very human desire for connection busts through the seams of the weird tiny box that we're taught masculinity is. Most of us are familiar with the Gottman's concept of emotional bids. They're just ways of reaching out to people, creating the opportunity for others to engage with us. You can think of emotional bids as connection-seeking behavior. So things like, there's a new restaurant downtown, I heard it's good, and looks like a nice day for a walk, are emotional bids. They can be much more direct than that, and they can also be much less direct than that, but you get the idea. Responding to emotional bids is a primary indicator of relational health and a very accurate predictor of relational longevity. But through the very wounded and restrictive models of masculinity that men inherit, it's rare for emotional bids from men to be that clean. You're only likely to hear the kinds of textbook emotional bids that most of us think of as such from men who've done a lot of healing work in this culture, or who were raised in a rare, healthy family. From most men, they're largely unrecognizable as emotional bids at all. We're culturally punished for vulnerability and emotionality in our youth, so most of us are completely unaware when we're engaging in connection-seeking behavior at all, making it understandable that most people can't recognize emotional bids from men. It also leads to most of these kinds of bids being ineffective, counterproductive, and often outright harmful. With that in mind, I see emotional bids from men often expressing in some of the following ways. Any subject change unrelated to the work at hand. If a guy randomly asks, "So how do you like that Ford?" when you're not talking about cars, that's an emotional bid. He's looking to connect. Even things like, "Cold yesterday," are actually emotional bids. There's no logistical point to that statement. He's not looking for anything. He's looking for everything. He's looking for friendship and connection. In men's spaces, emotional bids are often insults. Working on a new job site, guys are most likely to ignore you at first. It'll be strictly business. Then they'll start making fun of you. That's an emotional bid. It's an invitation to community, deeper relationship. All of a sudden, guys are saying, "Hey, can you cut that any slower? My fingers are almost frozen, and if they freeze all the way, I can go the hell home." Or, "Fancy new cards, bud. Shame you're getting them all dirty doing a little real work." Those are emotional bids. I remember as a teenager, the first time I was working on a job site, and I was in the outhouse, and nails started bouncing off the outside. I was excited. I was thrilled. Because I'd seen guys fire nails from the pneumatics at the outhouse before when their buddies were in there. They meant it as friendly to me, and I took it as such. Notice, I'm not saying that's healthy. There's a lot of really horrible takedowns and other ugly stuff in men's spaces, and most guys embed any criticisms they have of other men into insults in ways that are really horrible, because most men lack the confidence to give honest, straightforward, non-personal criticism. Their insecurity leads them to hide it in personal insults, which is a horrible and caustic way to communicate. Firing nails at a sheet of plastic that your buddy is naked behind is a funny way to make friends, because sometimes the nails hit point first and stick straight through the plastic, only catching on the nail's head. And sometimes, especially framing nails, don't catch on the head and just fire straight into the outhouse and bounce around, potentially hitting or impaling the vulnerable person hiding inside that hard shell. I'm not just talking about nails. One very common emotional bid that men make is gaming. Oh, you thought that was just a way to chill out, or a distraction, or an addiction, or a hobby? Nope. That's men seeking connection and community. It's by far the most accessible pathway for men to find and feel connection with other people. It's often the only place men feel a sense of supportive community from other men, which is one of the reasons it's so brutally gatekept from women. If those guys had healthy men's groups where their need and desire for men's culture and camaraderie was met, they likely wouldn't be such petty little jackasses to women and girls in gaming spaces. So there's plenty of room for discussion about whether video games are a healthy or effective way for men to try and meet their need for community. But all of that conversation has to be built on the understanding that men are using video games to try and meet that need. Even single-player games meet this need because they allow men to feel not alone. The other super common way men bid for connection is through Porn. This is a huge topic. I have dozens of pages on a longer piece on porn that I've been working on for years, but for now I'll try and stay on topic here and just say that it's one of the only places men experience unqualified celebration and enthusiastic excitement about our bodies, about ourselves on an existential level. This can be hard to grasp because men are uplifted and celebrated and rewarded in so many ways in our society, but it's not existential. It's for productivity or capacity based. We don't celebrate boys and men for who they are. We celebrate them for what they do. My dad celebrated me for winning sports ball games or for winning fistfights or graduating from things. And I get that there are ways in which men are celebrated just for being men. But because our culture teaches that masculinity is something that you have to earn and then defend, even that is not existential celebration of a human who is male. And validation for boys and men being celebrated for being a man is a threat as much as it's a reward. But I'm getting into the weeds. The fact that so many men experience existential validation and celebration from porn is wildly sharp double-edged sword. Loving validation and celebration are fundamental human needs, and for most men today, that need is not met, so porn is often one of the only places men feel celebrated at all. But it cuts far deeper on the other side in ways that we often can't see. Men's human need for celebration and validation remaining unmet is cyclical and cumulative because the person responsible for meeting that need is always the man himself. Most men never learn this. In fact, we're punished and severed from actual self-love in puberty, which makes porn dangerously appealing, and then creates a feedback cycle where we outsource our need for love and validation to porn. So 3 things happen. The first is that we never learn to meet that existential need for excited, loving, intimate validation and celebration of us for ourselves. The second is that we learn to think that the only place we can receive that fundamental validation and celebration is in sexuality. The third is that we build a deep, lifelong expectation that women will meet that need for us. The scale of effects that these 3 things have in conjunction is impossible to overstate. But I'm getting outside the scope of this video. For now, we just need to understand that these 3 things lead men to show up to sexuality with women carrying this massive, existential, unmet need, and carrying the belief that it is women's job, women's natural role to meet that need for us. This makes men wildly, unspeakably dangerous to women. Women are born into, grow in, and live in that world. Many women want nothing more than to be able to safely and joyfully celebrate their male partners, but porn's world has made that unsafe in a way that men simply can never comprehend, because as men, we don't grow with a class of people above us putting that expectation and need onto us with their eyes and souls, hands and bodies, taking that from us from the time we are little children. So women have very sound reasons for being very careful in how they engage with men and hesitant to do so at all. And that leads men, shaped by porn, to feel that women aren't doing their natural jobs and drives men back towards porn for validation. You see how this creates a reinforcing belief that porn is the only place that men can get that need for celebration and validation met. We never learn that we can validate and celebrate ourselves. And we never learn to ask for it honestly. The idea of simply saying to our partners, hey, can you just tell me that you really love me, love my body, think I'm really hot, is anathema to most men's sense of masculinity. We don't know that we can do that totally apart from sexuality. Even if we intellectually know that women who love us would be overjoyed to hear and meet that request to celebrate us in those ways, it's like the idea of speaking those words fills our mouths with solid concrete. Every movie and locker room joke in our entire life screams that we simply will not survive speaking those words. So by far, the most common emotional bid that most men ever make is pulling up a video of some beautiful woman who he can experience as being enthusiastically excited about his body with no vulnerability on his part at all. Again, there is so much to talk about around porn, its roots and effects. This was just painting how it's an emotional bid. The last thing that I'll add here is that the lessons porn and its emergent mainstream culture teach men, which are not to validate and love ourselves, that validation is always explicitly sexual, and that women are responsible for our validation, don't go away when men stop watching porn. It's just like any other addiction. When I stopped drinking, my subjective experience was that my life got way worse because all of a sudden I was facing all the stuff I'd been dodging for a decade in a bottle. Putting down porn is identical, and that's why it's so hard for a lot of guys, because it's their only lifelong, reliable point of validation. Setting down porn makes guys face the absence of real validation or love in our lives, and that's brutal. But putting it down is a necessary step to actually meeting those needs in healthy ways. The last emotional bid that many men make, which we don't see as such, is anger/violence. I was talking with a man the other day, and he was sharing how when he's just doing dishes in his house with his wife nearby, sometimes he'll just bark a swear word at the dishes. He talked about how he doesn't do this when he's alone, about how his wife hates it. It makes her feel unsafe in her home. In exploring what he felt in those moments, he was able to be really clear about how he's feeling hurt and sad and lonely. When we talked about what he's hoping for in those moments, he was clear that he wants connection. He wants to talk about it. He wants to share how he's feeling with his partner. But he's been culturally trained not to say, "I'm feeling really sad and hurt. Do you have space to hear that from me?" So it pops out as expletives at the plates. It's noteworthy that men are basically given one emotional tool, and it's anger/violence. So we use it for a wide variety of reasons, but one of them is absolutely emotional bids. There is great risk in any nuance. The massive risk here is that because men are taught from birth that women are responsible for our emotions, and because women are taught from birth that they're responsible for men's emotions, everybody listening is at grave risk of taking this information and thinking that it's up to women to be more responsive to men's harmful and dangerous emotional bids. That's not the takeaway here. This is men's work. It's up to men to heal and learn to meet our own needs and to learn to communicate in healthier and more respectful ways. Any degree to which this information is used to believe that women should be more tolerant of harm is a weaponization of nuance against women. But I don't believe that healing lies in dodging or ignoring nuance. The only way out of this is through. Men have to see it and face it. If this information helps us all, women included, to see men a little more clearly and humanize us a little bit, that's constructive. But tolerance, minimization of impacts, and excusal are not support. I've learned a lot from Derek Jensen. He has some takes that I don't agree with, but that's true of a lot of people I've learned a lot from. Anyway, I bring him up because of his concepts of toxic mimics. Jensen describes toxic mimics as things that appear to meet a healthy human need, but are actually poisoning us. So McDonald's is a toxic mimic of food. Facebook is a toxic mimic of community. You get the idea. These functionally ubiquitous forms of emotional bids from men in our culture are toxic mimics of emotional bids. They appear to meet our need for connection and community while actually poisoning us. That's not absolute. I don't think video games or playful mockery are entirely bad. I just see them both being used in problematic ways in our culture by masculinity, and often replacing or preempting much healthier pathways. But if someone's options are actually McDonald's or nothing at all, McDonald's is the better choice. The guys on the job site firing mockery and nails at their friends think it's wholesome fun, but it's creating a culture of repression, disconnection, and normalized harm. The gentleman swearing at his dishes near his wife is starting an emotional exchange with his wife. It appears to meet that need for dialogue on some level, but it's actually harming both of them. Guys turning to Orn for celebration, validation, and release think that it's meeting a need, but it's actually poisoning them. Orn feels validating and celebratory, but in reality it's not, because validation can only come from humans. And not only is Orn inherently distant, voyeuristic, impersonal, and removed from us as actual people, so we're not humans through that, the nature of the industry, its production, its distribution, and the culture in which all these things is happening is so wildly dehumanizing to women that it prevents the women on the screen from being actual humans to our experience, which makes their celebration and validation vapid and impotent. By dehumanizing women, Orn makes its only apparent benefit to men effectively meaningless. When internalized over time, this dehumanization of women leads men to be unable to hear validation from any women at all. So the lessons of Orn emotionally cripple men for life, and often lead to men never being able to receive love or validation at all, let alone give it in meaningful ways. This is just one of the many reasons why it's a toxic mimic. It appears to meet a need while poisoning us. So once we learn to see this, basically all the dissociative and harmful behaviors we associate with masculinity today are toxic mimics of emotional bids. All those behaviors have other roots and applications as well, and tons of intended and unintended effects. But they are connection-seeking behavior. And a reminder, while I've worked with a lot of guys and that's a lot of what I do today, I'm no kind of mental health worker at all. So I'm guaranteed to have missed something in this or be off in different ways. I'm just trying to describe the trends I see and have experienced and to share my interpretation of them. So I'd love to hear from more qualified folks about this, and I'd love your thoughts, whoever you are. I'm exploring territory and frameworks here. especially you other men. I would love to hear how you're breaking out of these patterns that we all inherit and how you're practicing healthy emotional bids these days.